What we are going to talk about is something that I love. It's Rav Hirsch really at his best. Right? How to leave Gullus. We all want to leave Gullus, right? How to leave Gullus. Okay. So personal Gullus, national Gullus. Right? It says in the parsha, I will remember my Yaakov covenant, right? Brisi Yaakov. Also, also my Yitzchak covenant, and also my Avraham covenant will I remember, and I will remember the land. This is a quote from Bechukatai. For many people, the formula for the ending of Gullus is simple: do tshuva, end Gullus. Our parsha suggests that there may be more to it than that. Most people intuitively translate our pasuk as my covenant with Yaakov. We would have expected that the Torah would have used a different preposition like Am Yaakov, or at least implied it with Eis Yaakov. That means with Yaakov. Taken at face value, the pasuk speaks of 3 different covenants, each one bearing the name of one of the Avos, one of the patriarchs, and following the contours of life of the person for whom it was named. So the way it's often translated is, I will remember my covenant with Yaakov, my covenant with Yitzchak, my covenant with Avraham. Right? That's not what it says. Right? And this is what Rav Hirsch is pointing out. There's no with. It says, I will remember my Yaakov covenant, my Yitzchak covenant, my Avraham covenant. It's not about, gee, I have a debt to these 3 guys, so that's what I'm going to do. It's actually describing the nature of the covenant, of the relationship. Right? And he says, there will come a time when I will remember these, right? And I will remember the land itself, meaning Eretz Yisrael.
So it's not a contract, it's a broader agreement.
It's a contract made with them as representatives. Every Jew is descended from these 3 people. Right? After that, it's not true. If I'm from Shevet Levi, you could be from Shevet Reuben, you could be from Shevet Gad, right? But all of us are children of Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. There's no escaping that. After that, it branches out.
A covenant is a broader kind of agreement. We follow halachas. Hashem gives us rain and harvest and long life. But when you say a blessing on bread, that's more of a contractual relationship.
Well, our understanding of brachas, especially around things like food, is that we're recognizing the ownership of the universe being God's, and in making the blessing, God is delighted to make that ours. To take it without the blessing is to take that which is not ours.
It's more specific.
That's really the relationship in the blessing. The covenant is something, first of all, that isn't related to, although it's mentioned names here, right? It's not related as though with the passing of one of the Avos, the covenant ends. It is made with that patriarch because of the nature of that patriarch, but it is for all that his descendants. As long as his descendants remain within the covenant and God remains existent, the covenant continues.
3 different covenants, 3 different people.
And we're going to get to this.
Okay,
we're going to get this, right? So what we're talking about here is not simply a deal with each of the 3, but that the deal with God, with the Jewish people, has 3 different qualities to it. Right? Okay, so that's why it's not called my covenant with Yaakov. It's called my Yaakov covenant. Right?
Okay, go on.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So, another covenant should be understood similarly. Hashem rewards Pinchas, right? Remember Pinchas? Pinchas' zealousness and bravery, not with a covenant of peace. Bravery, not with a covenant of peace, as most assume, but with a peace covenant. What's the difference?
He's the one with the knife.
That's right. He's
the blade right through them.
That's right. Barbecue.
Yeah,
Right.
barbecue.
Spit. Right.
The spit. Yeah.
Right. A covenant, but with a shalom covenant, not a covenant of peace, but with a peace covenant. What's the difference? A covenant assuring that the world would ultimately arrive at a time of godly tranquility and well-being. Pinchas is made part of that covenant because progress towards a euphoric state of affairs cannot be entrusted to the weak and the irresolute. It will take people with Pinchas's qualities to bring that promise into reality. A world of peace comes about through overcoming challenges.
To create a Seder.
Yeah. That inevitably it will happen, but it will not happen by sitting back and letting the world work on you. You need to work on the world. And this is Pinchas.
He is a serious worker.
The three covenants of our Pasuk share much in common. All of them speak of closeness to God, who supervises all aspects of the lives of the people. All of them are necessary for the development of a Torah nation. Each one then heads off in a different direction from the other two. How so? Abraham, now you have to think about each of the offices.
A lover.
Abraham stood alone against the positions and feelings of the entire world. Right? Abraham.
That's why I call it Ivri, right?
That's right, from the other side. Yet, he was not molested or persecuted for his differences. To the contrary, he was accepted as a prince of God. Everybody recognized when Abraham was in our midst, we're having a holy experience, that he really is a godly person. Melchizedek recognizes it when he sees him. The B'nai Ches, when they give him the Machpelah, they recognize it. It's constantly
individual.
Absolutely right, and this is one of the Jewish qualities, right? That he was accepted as a prince of God. His material success was not met with jealousy by others. He was a fabulously wealthy man, right? And he was permitted to speak his mind in calling all to serve the one God. This was Abraham. What about his son? Yitzchak also did well, but his message engendered jealousy and hostility. Remember, they kept closing up his wells. There was a lot of hostility. Right? He was not openly opposed because of his sheer power, but this rejection by others meant that he was forced into a life of isolation, living without closeness to others, but making his own family his world. Right? So Abraham, we understand, had thousands and thousands of disciples.
It's different. It's
right?
not like the more
Yitzchak had one
in
the end, not even Esau. Just Yaakov. So how about
like his father? If you really think about it, he's very different.
He had a different life. Yeah, and his personality is very different. One is chesed, one is gevurah.
Yeah, he's very different.
For Yaakov, life was a succession of struggles.
Oh, yeah.
With the angel.
Right? Struggles with his brothers,
Struggle with everybody.
The angels,
Yeah,
struggle with
5
Lavan,
seconds
struggle
problems.
with Dinah, struggle with Paro.
Even with that guy who shakes him down.
Loss of Yosef. Loss of Yosef.
Yeah, but Lavan shakes him down.
Yeah, that's right.
It's all shakedown.
That's right. Yeah. For Yaakov, life was a succession of struggles. Mariv, he gave Mariv to the world. Mariv, the evening prayer that he instituted, was emblematic of his life of darkness, punctuated only by brief periods of full contentment and happiness. We remember the conversation he had with Paro when he met Paro. Paro said, "You look so old." He said, Our pasuk tells us that Jewish history would not follow a single path. Golus itself would lead us down different paths. Each of these life patterns is a separate covenant the Jewish people would need to experience and develop within each. Hashem would stand by them through the trials and tribulations that each would bring. They would move from one to another when they had successfully navigated the challenges of each, and would thus be ready for the next set of circumstances. Right? So we go through all of these different goluses. The covenants are presented in our pasuk. Now this is very interesting. What's unusual about our pasuk? Let's look at it. When we daven, do we say the God of Yaakov, Yitzchak, and Abraham? No, we don't. What do we say? we say.
God, Abraham is Yitzchak and Yaakov. It's in that order, not the other order.
Right. So this seems to be reversed order.
Reversing the order.
Right.
Oh,
so this order seems to be reversed.
That's the point. Because
right?
when you do Amidah, you always say the God of Abraham.
Exactly.
Every single day you would do that.
That's right.
So we start out with the oneness.
All of these
Why
elements.
did we put it in a different order?
The covenants are presented in our pasuk in reverse order to chronology of the Avos. We would have to live by the Yaakov covenant before moving to the Yitzchak bris, which in time would transition to the Abraham covenant. Remember, the Avos already lived their covenant, right? They went A, B, and C. That's where we are now. We have to go back, C, B, and A. Right? So, what does it mean? Moreover, the Yaakov covenant seems to be the focus and the centerpiece of our pasuk. The other covenants are simply adjuncts joined to the main covenant with the word also. It's probably significant that Yaakov is spelled Malay with an optional vav. It's rarely spelled with this vav, one more vav. It augurs a larger role for his covenant. All of these elements combine to depict the progress of our long Gauss. The longest period would be spent in the Yaakov phase, a long dark night of persecution and bloodshed. Jews would realize that their suffering was purposeful, that it addressed their earlier shortcomings by demanding absolute loyalty to Hashem and His words. Jews would be scorned, hated, dealt with contemptuously, but they would not abandon His Torah. In time they would fulfill the terms of His covenant. The other nations will be moved in part by their tenacity and lifted to a higher place by the ideals by which they lived. This partial enlightenment would leave them somewhat kinder and gentler, and the persecution of Jews would ease somewhat. This is very interesting because when you read historically about those people who praise Jews, one of the things they praise is their continued existence. It's one of the things our enemies hate. Right?
Still here.
But it's one of the things that, I think maybe most eloquent in this was Mark Twain, and we've talked about this before. Right. With this, they enter the second phase, right, of the covenant, that of Yitzchak. And I would argue we may be nearing that or be there now. Living in increased prosperity. Jews have never been globally as wealthy as they are today or as free as they are today. Jews would be tossed back and forth between two attitudes of a conflicted world community. On one hand, the nations would ask the Jews to be treated humanely. On the other, the now ascendant Jews would suffer the envy and jealousy of others. Written in the 1840s.
You might as well write that now in the
1840s,
book right now.
Right. It's
the newspaper.
There's an absolutely remarkable article that, if you remind me, I'll send to you, written by Caroline Glick.
Yeah, she probably says exactly the same thing.
It tells you that the time has come, right, for us to recognize who we are, right, and to realize that reality to the benefit of the world. How could they react to the newly acquired well-being and opportunity? The Yitzhak covenant calls for Jews to live like their forebears, apart from others, refusing to assimilate. Because now they have the opportunity to assimilate, which they didn't during the Yaakov covenant, where they were despised. Right? They would understand that the privilege of prosperity comes with responsibility. They would use their new blessings to increase their devotion to Torah, not for their own self-indulgence. Now remember what Rabbi Hirsch is struggling with here. Right? He's struggling with assimilation in front of his eyes.
I'm sure the reform rise.
He's saying to his readership, okay, they've taken the hood off of us. The nations are no longer killing us, right? They've accepted us. Let's be careful about how we enter their world, right? We still need to have separation. We still need to understand what it is. Just because they accept us doesn't mean that we become them. Okay, we're running for this opportunity because we've been despised for so long. We figure, okay, let's go for it. Rabbi Hirsch is saying, no, right? They are accepting who we are to some degree because we persevered through all of their attacks and stayed true to who we are. And they're looking back and saying, reluctantly, I got to take my hat off to these people who don't take their hats off, by the way. Right? That we have to do that. Now that they're taking their hat off to us, should we become them?
No.
And Rav Hirsch is saying, just because you have the opportunity to, don't seize that opportunity. Seize the opportunity for material wealth, for peace, for comfort, right? In order to enhance that relationship you have with God, which will enhance the whole nature of the world itself, because you have that responsibility. Do your job now that you have the opportunity to do it. When this world comes to pass, they would be ready for the final stage, right? Where they're not involved in their own self-indulgence, but using their freedom and wealth for a positive purpose. After Jews demonstrate that man can utilize God's blessings to him entirely for positive purposes, the true mission of the Jewish people will dawn upon the nations. The true mission of the Jewish people will dawn upon the nations. They will realize that Klal Yisrael had been entrusted millennia earlier with Hashem's Torah in order so that they should take it forth into history and into the world and eventually enrich all of mankind through Torah. No longer would they be hated or subject to jealous contempt. Indeed, they would no longer be tolerated. They would no longer be tolerated despite being Jewish, but honored because they are Jewish. Only after this covenant will be fully fulfilled would the final phase of our pasuk become a reality. With this completion, the tripartite Gullus comes to an end, and Hashem's people return to their land in peace and in tranquility. Upon that special land, they would demonstrate the beauty of living according to God's plan in the physical environment that is most conducive to wringing the most out of mitzvahs, the holy land of Eretz Yisrael itself. The final piece here that Rav Hirsch is making, is stating, right, is that we will reverse the process in Galus. We will eliminate the Yaakov Galus with the that was part of the Yaakov bris. Then we will move on to the Yitzchak bris, which is the one in which life is better, but there are jealousies. Then we will move on to the state of the Avraham bris, right, which is one of the Prince of God, and recognize that, and then we'll go to the land. Well, it would seem, since the writing of this document, that we are not in a lechatchila situation where we got to be a Prince of God and then were carried by the nations to the land of Israel to live that life, but that we suffered through the most painful part of the Yaakov Galus, the Shoah, right, and then are rebuilding the land in a very dramatic way. Now, are we living out the Yitzchak bris now? That bris of success, of freedom, of wealth, of parnasa, and using it for all its right purposes. I think that anybody would argue that we're not 100% there, but we are in the land of Israel. And so the question would be then is, should we give it up and start again? And I would say that Rav Hirsch would not say that we should give it up and start again. We're here, and it behooves us to take that wealth and success that is the Yitzchak wealth and success and to use it for its right purposes, and then move on to the Avraham bris, in which we realize our mandate and our entire historical purpose to bring light to the world, to be light unto the nations, and do it through living according to Torah. It should happen now.
Oh yeah, Shakoi.